A new era is underway in WWE. What's going on, guys? Good Mike Or Commentaries back at you with your WWE Raw review for July 25th, 2022. Tonight's Raw took place in Madison Square Garden, and it is a very significant and historic show, as earlier on today, it was announced by WWE that Triple H has been named the new head of WWE Creative, in addition to all of the other duties he currently has. Bruce Pritchard will remain on the writing team along with Ed Koskey, but Triple H is going to be the go-to guy now from a creative standpoint, along with his wife being a co-CEO along with Nick Khan. So WWE is starting to position themselves for life after Vince, and the chips are starting to fall and the pieces are starting to land where they are going to land. And I think today's announcement about Triple H had an overwhelmingly positive reaction from not only the wrestling fans, but a lot of wrestlers themselves. A lot of people do believe, and myself included, that in the long run, this will be a good move overall. It would be silly and naive to expect changes the first night and see a clear, different direction in how WWE presents their content or their booking philosophy or anything like that. I've maintained ever since the beginning, ever since Vince said he was going to be retiring, that whatever happens, it's going to have to be some sort of slow transition or kind of a gradual thing. It's not going to be like a light switch where tomorrow is going to be completely different. But Triple H was at the helm tonight, basically playing the role of Vince McMahon, and his very first show was in Madison Square Garden. Triple H has had a lot of interesting moments in that building. I find it very ironic that he was once suspended 26 years ago for hugging a bunch of his friends in that very building. And here he is all these years later, now holding the man who suspended him's job. That's crazy, son. Absolutely crazy. Not to mention Triple H's big comeback 20 and a half years ago, back in January of 2002, from that injury, the big no-holds-barred match he had with Cactus Jack at the Royal Rumble, plus the curtain call, like I said. A lot of big moments in MSG for Triple H. And to have his first show in charge of WWE be at the Garden, I just think is dripping with irony. And I find it really interesting. And I got to say, we're going to talk about a lot of the Triple H situation and stuff tonight. But I got to say, I was really met with this like overwhelming feeling of optimism. I don't see how shit can't not get better. I can certainly not imagine it getting worse now with Vince and his vision gone and removed from that little things we should start seeing change in WWE to where they can gradually maybe start turning the corner. As I said today on Twitter, if we can just capture a sliver of the magic that the black and gold had and somehow implant that onto the red and blue, I think there is going to be some really positive and optimistic changes coming along in WWE with Triple H kind of being the guy, because he's very well liked by talent. He's worked well with talent. He's not perfect. He's not going to be perfect. We're still going to see a bunch of shit on WWE TV that we don't agree with. And I think fans need to understand that right from the get-go here, that if you see something on Raw that isn't good, that doesn't mean automatically that Triple H is a failure and things were better with Vince. I think they're going to be so expecting so much improvement so quickly in WWE that if they don't get it, they're like, "What? This is a big mistake," because I can already see it happening right now. But I think slowly and surely Triple H's philosophy will start becoming apparent, and we should start seeing, hopefully, some better changes creatively in WWE, and even perhaps maybe a few people that were just being slashed and cut willy-nilly. Maybe Triple H can step in and say, I don't want to lose him. We're keeping him. And with Stephanie as CEO, I just think that this is going to be a really positive move overall for WWE. The stock price went up today after the news of Vince retiring and Triple H being named head of creative, and WWE showing the investors that they are moving forward with plans. And now that Vince has been removed from the situation and they're trying to resume business as usual without that dark cloud hanging over their head, the stock price ticked up a bit and showed some life today, which is good for the overall business of the company. But that's the financials. That's the investor stuff. What we care about is what we see on TV. What we care about is the in-ring action, the pay-per-views, the storylines, the Raws, the SmackDowns, shit like that. To us, that is what should be important here. And that's why I believe in the end and in the long term, we're going to start seeing some good changes in WWE. At least I'm optimistic that we will see that. I could be completely wrong, but I feel pretty good about the move and about the situation. Now, there's still a lot of questions to be answered. Kevin Dunn's name has been coming up a lot, and there has been some word and rumors that most believe he will be on his way out the door of WWE as well after being there for 35 plus years or whatever it's been. However long he's been there, it's been a long time, well over 30 years, and he's basically been one of Vince's inner circle members, one of his right-hand men, and many believe that he will be leaving now that Vince McMahon is gone, and I think that is also a really good move for the company to make. Now, obviously, there's going to be a successor to Kevin Dunn if and when he does depart the company, and that successor, I'm sure, will have been trained under the tutelage of Kevin Dunn and knows the WWE product and their production and how they like to do things. Just like with the creative stuff, like we saw tonight with that typical DQ finish and then a match restart. It's a tool they use way too often. It's something that I think they should bust out every 7 months, and they bust it out every 7 days. And little things like that, I think, are still going to persist in WWE. If we get a new Kevin Dunn, he might have better teeth, but I don't think his camera cuts are really going to be all that much better because that's just the way they produce shit. So I think major changes to where WWE appears to be a completely different product than it is right now today. I think that's some time off. I think there's going to be some sort of a transition period, and we could still be looking at a year or two before we can really see changes for the better, and we can look at ourselves and say, remember how bad shit sucked 2 years ago? I am so glad they've got their act together now. I'm really optimistic that, with Triple H in charge and WWE losing a lot of that maniac type of atmosphere and vibe that Vince McMahon brings to the workplace, with him getting, head exploding mad over the dumbest shit, ripping up scripts 5 minutes before they go live, completely just kiboshing or killing the push of somebody just because he doesn't like the haircut they showed up with that day, that type of stuff. I think we're going to see change in WWE, and I think the talent is probably breathing a huge sigh of relief at this point, knowing that if they have a problem, Triple H is the go-to guy now and not a crazy fucking lunatic. And Triple H seems to be a lot more level-headed, and he seems to really enjoy doing the part based on what we saw him do in NXT. He seemed to be somebody that really enjoyed working with the developmental talent and seeing them along and helping their improvement and motivating them, all that stuff, instead of trying to be some intimidating figure. He's a little bit more hands-on, and I think, as somebody that's worked for 30 years in restaurants, it's much easier to work for a boss that trusts you and knows what you're capable of and believes in you than a boss that's always trying to fucking make you scared and worried and nervous and that type of thing. It's no way to work, and it's no way to live. And I know that Vince wasn't 100% bad. There's still plenty of stories we would hear to this day of talent having really fun, lighthearted interactions with Vince. He still has good connections with wrestlers to some degree, but I think overall, Triple H is going to be a much more welcomed authority role behind the scenes from a creative perspective. And now that takes care of the talent. We just have to worry about us. And tonight's show at MSG, it felt like it might have started off a little bit different. We opened up with no opening, just a brawl between The Miz and Logan Paul right in the ring. And then after that cleared out, we got Roman Reigns showing right up for a promo. So it felt like Raw was hitting the ground running. But honestly, I think even if these changes weren't made and Vince McMahon was still in control, there's a really good chance we would have seen overall the same show tonight. Because a lot of people were pointing out, I actually made a joke tweet earlier about not seeing any changes, and I had a couple responses, and I saw some of the other same things on Twitter to other people saying, the show was written before Triple H was named head of creative. It's like it's like in Forrest Gump when Forrest tells Lieutenant Dan, well, you ain't got no legs, Lieutenant Dan. And Lieutenant Dan just goes, yes, I know that, and that was the same thing. I'm like, we understand that, yeah, the show was probably written out or mostly booked before the announcement of Triple H taking over creative was made. But do you think it's possible, maybe, that Triple H knew he was going to be named head of creative maybe a couple of days earlier? And this was the announcement they made today. You think Triple H found out with all of us? I don't think so. He probably knew about this. And to say that implies that once a show is written, it can't be changed. This is WWE we're talking about. If we know anything about them, is that, the show can definitely change. As a matter of fact, sometimes segments change as the show's already on the air. The show's already started, and they've got the fourth or fifth segment that they want to change up and let everybody know what the new plans are and what they're doing in a very, very short amount of time. You got 40 minutes to get your shit together and then get out there. Here's what we're doing now. So WWE will change the script. So if Triple H did look at the script and he saw something in there that he personally found ridiculous, he would have full authority to make a change there if he wanted to. So to imply that the script was written before Triple H took over and it can't be changed is naive, extremely. So let's not be crazy here about all of this. We have to understand that it's going to take time for WWE main roster product to improve, but at the same time, we have to be realistic and optimistic in terms of the changes we will see. And I do expect to see little changes immediately, right off the bat. But these are little things. The overall booking philosophy, I think, will take some time to change. But overall, the news seemed to be very positive coming out of WWE today. A lot of fans celebrating on social media that this is going to be a good move. And like I said in my very crazy, jumbled up podcast yesterday that I basically scrambled to get together because I've been working a lot this weekend, we talked a lot about Vince McMahon leaving, but at this point, Triple H hasn't been named head of creative yet. So we did talk about how Vince being gone is going to affect the pro wrestling landscape in general. And now, for the past 3 years, it's felt like the decision, if you're a wrestler, the decision to work for Tony Khan or Vince McMahon was a relatively easy one. Not for all wrestlers. You've got your Codys and your other ones, but for the most part, a lot of people have just really soured on WWE, soured on the backstage atmosphere. Morale has been at an all-time low in the company, and nobody is really deliriously happy there based on how things are run. And a lot of talent has been leaving and going to AEW because of that. And then you combine that with WWE, with the pandemic hitting and WWE cutting so much amazing talent, enough talent to build your entire federation. And that inflation period in AEW, that gave them an inflation period to where they were able to sign all of these great available wrestlers that under normal circumstances shouldn't be available. So it's kind of funny how life works sometimes, because if this decision would have been made and Vince got busted for this, let's say 3 years ago before AEW started, and then Stephanie was put in charge and Triple H was implemented or was installed as the head of creative, I'm not sure if it would be that easy of a decision for the talent just to say, I am sick of these assholes in WWE. I'm going to go work for AEW. Tony Khan seems like a fun boss, a likable boss, a relatable boss, and Vince McMahon's just too crazy for me. If this decision would have been made 3 years ago, a lot of that NXT talent, number one, probably wouldn't have been let go or wouldn't have left, Adam Cole and a lot of these other guys that chose to sign elsewhere might still be there now. And some talent like Samoa Joe and maybe a few others that Triple H really liked and cared for and saw value in, they might have not been released either, because Triple H would probably be more of a part of that. Or he could tell his wife, hey, I don't want to release that guy. I think we can use him, that type of thing. So it could make everything very different now. AEW could still have a much weaker roster now if all of this shit would have went down before they launched. So they got really lucky with the timing, with AEW launching and then with COVID hitting and WWE panicking because they're losing money because they're not able to run live events and shows and shit like that. So they go ahead and cut all sorts of wrestlers, many of them former world champions, and AEW did their best to sign all of the great ones that they could, really balancing out the rosters. It really, WWE was up here and AEW was down here, but as we've seen, it's a lot more even now when you just look at the roster on paper. Look at the two side-by-side rosters on paper. They are way more even than they were 3 years ago. So now that all of this has happened, AEW was able to sign all of WWE's release stars and a lot of the stars that chose not to sign with WWE and go to AEW, like the Danielsons and the Cesaros and CM Punk, when he decided to come back, and all these pieces of talent that are over there now. I think that's going to kind of cut off now. And now that Triple H is in charge, I don't know if AEW is going to be able I don't know if that's going to be such a no-brainer anymore. If you're a piece of talent in WWE that is, maybe been floundering a little bit, your contract is up, maybe now it's like, well, I'm going to listen to what WWE has to say. And what about all of the AEW current stars? You know, Tony Khan's got to make sure that he keeps them happy as well, because there were a lot of people that worked for and loved Triple H and NXT who are over there now, who Triple H could always lure back. You know, I mean, they can't tamper, so Tony Khan's going to probably want to get extensions signed on these guys before their contracts even come up. But when you look at your Adam Coles and your Keith Lees and all of the other great talent that was allowed to walk out the door of WWE, you have to wonder how much of that Triple H yearns to have back. And if he does, that could make things really interesting in the long term, especially with AEW just relaunching Ring of Honor now. And now it seems like maybe Triple H can have some influence bringing people back, perhaps. But you got to remember, people in AEW, all the top stars there are likely pretty happy and likely paid pretty well. So it's just going to make free agency way different in the future, and it's going to make competition way more fun. I really think this is a positive move all around. Like I said yesterday, I don't have any sort of dog in the stupid war. I'm excited for these changes in WWE because I believe it's going to help WWE. You're going to have other people that are excited about these changes because it's going to hurt AEW, because that's where their mind goes. You know, WWE has been a pain in the ass to watch. It's been brutal to watch, especially their TV shows. I am so mentally checked out when Raw or SmackDown is on the air. I barely pay attention because you don't need to. You see the same shit every week, the same matches, the same segments, the same promos, the same everything. And there's no real reason to watch it when you come back from commercial and they recap it 6 times and you can find out what's going on Raw within 5 or 6 minutes just on YouTube after the show. So it's just not worth watching most of the time. So that's why I think these changes could be good and could really help us as wrestling fans, especially me, who suffers through this nonsense all the time to do podcasts and stuff. And I'm like, it would be really nice to watch and enjoy WWE. I'm sick of watching it and hating everything I see. Wouldn't it be more fun if we got to watch it and enjoy it? So I think those days are upon us. I think those days will be coming in the future, and it is just going to take some time. You can't have everything happen the very, very first week. But overall, I'm excited about the changes. I think most of you guys are as well. And we'll see where things go. SummerSlam coming up this Sunday, big pay-per-view. I wouldn't imagine that very much of SummerSlam is going to be changed under Triple H's leadership creative-wise, because I'm sure they have an idea of where they were going to go in most of these matches. But after SummerSlam and we get into the fall months when things are a little quiet and WWE usually gets a little bit stale in the fall, maybe they can use this time to kind of regroup and really start coming up with some fun ideas. And we'll see if there's any more moving parts behind the scenes. Right now it's Triple H in charge of creative with Koski and Pritchard with him. But if you remember, Triple H was also renamed as VP of Talent Relations. And that could be a conflict of interest, because we just heard the same thing about Bruce Pritchard. After Vince stepped away, Stephanie was named interim. Bruce was going to take over not only creative, but talent relations in place of John Laurinaitis. And then everybody was like, well, that's kind of weird. How can you be in charge of creative? It's like being in creative and also being in HR. It's just weird. It's a weird combination when you have to go to the same person for two, very distinct different things, and things could get affected by that. So now that Triple H has been named the same, and now he's kind of the head of both, the same questions are arising. So I am curious. I just firmly believe, without ever having worked a day in WWE, I would think that being the head of WWE Creative is nearly a 24/7 job. It's something you always have to be thinking about. You probably have very little time for other jobs in the company. And if you're also managing the talent and their contracts and their negotiations and stuff, that's way too much going on. So I'm hoping that Triple H, being head of creative, maybe he can have someone else handle the talent relations, or maybe get somebody to help him with it or whatever. I don't know how the hell all that's going on backstage or how it's working behind the scenes, but it seems like that could be an issue for Triple H, since many people believed it would be an issue for Bruce Pritchard. But overall, I think we're very happy that Triple H just has some power in WWE and some power to make things happen on television. And we saw that he did pretty well in NXT. NXT wasn't perfect either. Triple H struggled maybe a little bit with long-term booking stuff because it was basically considered a developmental territory, and once people got rolling, they would generally get called up. So now you're not going to have the fear of people getting called up to another roster because they're already up here. So we'll see how Triple H can do on some of the more long-term stories. But basically I think he was showcasing talent and everything in NXT was very well done. And I'm really excited to see, his vision on WWE main roster programming. And can all of these changes last forever as well? We got to remember Vince might have been there 40 years, but that does not mean that Triple H will be in that position for 40 years either, and neither will Stephanie McMahon. And I think a lot of people are assuming that once all of the dust settles and the smoke clears here, WWE is likely setting themselves up for a sale. Getting the stock price up, getting the Vince McMahon stuff cleared away. That's what Nick Khan seemingly is there to do, is really position the company from a financial standpoint to get it sold for some big amount of money. I think they're looking at $10 billion, but I don't think they're going to get that much for it. And that could all be a very real thing in the future. And if that happens, then there could be a lot of changes. And one thing I do fear, and one thing that WCW struggled with, and one thing that I do think helped WWE for all of these years to have Vince McMahon in charge. The only problem is as Vince got older, the more out of touch he got, the crazier he got, and the more the product suffered for it. But having one guy there only really stabilizes things from behind the scenes standpoint, and probably provides, some comfort and stability to your staff and talent there, knowing very well who they need to go to and who is the final say on anything. And in WCW, since you didn't have that person back there, even when Bischoff was there was still a lot of other things, a lot of politics going on, and you really didn't know who the hell was really in charge. And when it came to the bookers, it was a revolving door. Everybody had the fucking pencil. Ric Flair and Kevin Nash and Kevin Sullivan and Bischoff probably. Russo came in. There was a lot of movement behind the scenes. And if WWE does sell to Disney or Amazon or whatever, I worry that we could see that too. Maybe Triple H isn't permanently going to be head of creative. Maybe he's just going to be head of creative for a couple of years, and then they're going to go in another direction or something like that. It'd be funny if he hired all his friends, bring in Scott Hall. I'm sorry, Scott Hall's passed away. Bring in Kevin Nash and X-Pac to be agents or producers or consultants, and get Sean in there. Sean, of course, is doing great work down in NXT. So this could be very exciting for WWE, but at the same time, we're venturing into uncharted territory. We're entering into an era that we know very little about. I am old enough to be around and be alive before Vince McMahon was in charge of things in WWE, but I don't really remember much about Vince Sr. and his booking and, that type of thing. So we have not really seen WWE and how WWE operates without Vince. We're all looking at this and watching this for the first time together. So all we can do is just judge it for ourselves. But I'm hoping, as the weeks and months go by, we see gradual improvement that eventually turns into major improvement on the shows. And that's just me being optimistic. So if we come back 1 year from today, July 25th, 2023, and not a damn thing has changed, then, I guess maybe it wasn't all Vince's fault after all. But I really feel like as bad as WWE has been, and as much as we've been complaining about it, as much as fans have been just turned off by WWE, I don't see how they can't get better. I don't see how shit can't get better. It just feels like it has to, naturally. I think the worst they can do is getting a little bit better. If they got a little bit better, I think that's the bare minimum. I think they can get a lot better without Vince McMahon and his inner circle having such power in WWE. And it might take a couple months, still get Kevin Dunn out of there and, get Bruce enough off to the side. And Bruce gets a ton of shit. I am not a Bruce hater at all. But I do think that having a bunch of people who think like Vince around Vince isn't necessarily good for the company either. So it's kind of a balance. I have no reason to ever sling any hate. That's just stupid. But Bruce definitely comes with his share of issues as well. So now that Triple H is, kind of going to be the guy here. That's very interesting, and it's real fun, if you ask me. So we will keep our eye on this. We will find out if there's more information as the days go on here, more little details about the reaction. I know I read 2 Fightful Select articles today, and pretty detailed in what's going on in WWE and mentioning how much talent seems to be a little bit more open to discussing things about Vince McMahon now that he's gone. And the reaction from the talent in WWE seems to be pretty positive in terms of this change that's going to be made. I know if I worked there, I'd be fucking stoked because we've all had a boss that we just wish would get out of our face. I'd be so much happier if this guy would just get out of my face. So if there is any talent in WWE that thinks that way, I'm happy for them today because that's got to be a very good feeling, and it's just got to be a huge sense of relief, I would think, to not have that stress associated with showing up and doing your job every day. You know what I mean? But anywho, I've been rambling a lot. I haven't even said hi yet. I can hear myself and see myself. Let me go over here to chat. Say hi to everybody that is here. We're going to talk about Raw in a minute. You can give me your grades on the show tonight. What did you think? Like I said earlier, I don't think that the show was really all that different than if Vince would have been there. It was a lot of the same stuff for the most part. It was an okay show, but not a great show. But I really wasn't expecting any super big changes on the first night, especially on a night where we just found out about Triple H being the head of creative like 5 hours before the show went live. So not expecting anything yet. But I still think people were looking at the show tonight with a fair amount of optimism. So I'm going to say hi to everybody in the chat. Please do me a favor. Smash that thumbs up button for me and be sure to subscribe if you are not yet already. Evan Neal, good to see you. Jay Lambo, Rodrigo, Stone Cold, Rarely Even, Yessie, Ben, Atomic Cody, Trey Williams, Deshaun, and Barry MK. Got some friends in the house. Good to see you guys. Robert Johnson, Andy Linnell. We've got Big J. We've got Kevin, Denny Downbad. Chris Miner, appreciate that $2 from you. Hopefully we get black and gold writing and booking. That would be nice, but it's not going to be able to be the same, though, because you got to remember, the black and gold did involve a lot of people moving up to the main roster a lot. So you kind of had to book with that in mind, and they're not going to have to do that now. And Triple H's long-term booking did leave a little bit to be desired in NXT. He is not perfect or necessarily the savior. He's just going to be a hell of a lot better than Vince McMahon. You know what I mean? Max Pokebra, good to see you as well. Destiny, Beetle, Waynan. We've got Ashton in the house as well. Michael Campbell, good to see you. Nick Musser. JJ Leg, appreciate the $5 from you, my friend. Late, but still made it. Hoping to see the Bruiserweight, not Butch, and Io Shirai at the top within a year or two in WWE. Yeah, you think about somebody like Io Shirai, who is still in NXT. Not only should she be on the main roster and should have been on the main roster like 2 or 3 years ago, still not there, and a lot of talk about her leaving. But now with Triple H being head of creative and head of talent relations, she could be somebody that they could hitch a wagon to. There's no reason why she couldn't be on the main roster right now and be a multi-time WWE Women's Champion. I really like Liv Morgan. I think she's super great, and I'm super happy for her. And I do believe that she deserves the belt. But sometimes you got to do a little bit more than just deserve it. And when I see somebody like Io Shirai, who hasn't even made it to the main roster, and then see a talent the caliber of Liv Morgan, who's currently the champion, what the fuck's going on here? Come on. Get that girl up there, and let's do something with her, because Io Shirai is way too valuable. Same thing with Pete Dunne, who they had to change to Butch, and now he's part of the Brawling Brutes. And I heard tonight, I didn't really look into this, but I overheard, or I read somewhere that I guess Sheamus and Drew McIntyre were scheduled to have like a shillelagh match or some bullshit on Friday, with the winner getting a title shot at Castlevania. And then tonight on Raw, Corey Graves or whoever referred to it as the Donnybrook match. So they might have changed it or whatever. I don't know if it was changed or what the hell was going on, but some sort of match with a stipulation, I think, is happening on Friday, and then the winner will go on to have a match at Castlevania. And I wonder who's going to win that. I think we've known all along it's going to be McIntyre and Roman at Castlevania, but they're going to try to act like it's going to be Sheamus. I just hope they don't do some schmaz finish where they stick that match on SummerSlam. I think it's weird to not have Drew McIntyre booked at SummerSlam, but I don't want to shoehorn a Drew McIntyre match in there just to do it, especially against somebody like Sheamus, who we've already seen him work against a bunch. They had a whole fucking feud during the pandemic and stuff, so we don't really need to revisit that at the second biggest pay-per-view of the year, in my mind. But yeah, little things like that, maybe some of these dumb little name changes and stuff, and a lot of the talent that Triple H really liked to push in NXT. And as we've seen so many times throughout the years, one of the big points of complaint that I've had forever on this podcast is that whenever somebody gets called up to the main roster, the NXT magic is literally instantly gone. And that's because the people in creative on the main roster don't know anything about these NXT stars. And so you think about how poorly they're all been used, what disrespect and a slap in the face that does to all of Triple H's hard work and mentorship down there in NXT, and how deflated I would be if I was Triple H. Now, some of that talent that's criminally underused on the main roster, maybe Triple H can kind of get them back on their feet and maybe do some more with these people that haven't been doing a whole lot since they had their great runs in NXT. That's another thing you have to think about in WWE too. Some talent that we feel should be used more, maybe they will now. It's really, really possible. Don't rule it out. Let me see if there's any other supers here before we get into the Raw review. Yeah, it does look like there's a couple. We got 6 out of 10, B, B, B minus, B, B, B. Everybody's B for Raw tonight. I can live with B. I might even give it a C plus, to be honest, but I'll tolerate a B. Why not? Zach Galler, thank you so much, dude, for the $5. They actually gave Rey Mysterio a happy ending tonight and didn't put heat on the Judgment Day. Still think Judgment Day wins at SummerSlam. Yeah, they had, actually, based on the match that was announced tonight, it's going to be, what, a intergender handicap? Isn't it all of Judgment Day? Maybe Rhea's not in the match. I saw Dom and Mysterio are going to face, oh, here we go. Oh, it's not even up here yet. So I can't remember if it's 3-on-2 or what, if Rhea's actually competing in this thing, but it feels like she is because she was beating the hell out of everybody in that backstage segment. But I kind of feel like Judgment Day could lose after Edge comes back. We've been seeing those vignettes. I thought Edge was going to show up tonight in Madison Square Garden, but it feels like since they've now booked that match for SummerSlam, that's where they are going to save the Edge return for. So I think based on Judgment Day's loss tonight, I think it was Balor that got pinned, right, by the Eddie Guerrero Frog Splash. They're due for a win, but I also think Edge could have something to do with that perhaps as well. And yeah, they didn't turn Rey, or they didn't turn Dominic. We'll talk about this in a minute. But how cool was it to see Aaliyah and Rhea Ripley come face-to-face? That was awesome. Chris Kane, appreciate the $2. Would you love to be a WWE commentator? No. Actually, no. When I was like a teenager, I had like a little bit of an interest in being an announcer for WWE. But I kind of quickly grew out of that. It's not a job that I really think I would enjoy. I don't. I mean, you'd get a great seat. You get to call the action. You get to see everything close up. But I don't know. It's just, I don't know, I guess it's just my old age. I just don't want to have like really, really stressful jobs. Now, when Vince McMahon was there, I certainly wouldn't want to be a WWE commentator, knowing that madman is in my ear screaming shit in my headset all night long. But even now, just being an announcer or being a play-by-play guy has never been something that I ever aspired to be. Maybe I should have tried it. Life of Brandon, you're a little late, but it's all good. Don't worry about it. Stone Cold 10X, thank you, dude. Welcome back. Appreciate $5 from you as well. I have thought since Ziggler is going after Theory, them have a match for the briefcase, that would be great. Have Dolph win. They could go in that direction. They could do a deal. We've seen it happen before in WWE where the briefcase gets put on the line and then he loses it. And one little change we did see in WWE, although not really, Theory is 0-6 since winning Money in the Bank, so he hasn't won at all. But it did feel like they spent the first hour shitting on him tonight, did it not? He came out, got fucking owned by Roman Reigns, and then I believe he got beat in the tag match, right? He tapped out to the Hurt Lock and stuff. So yeah, Theory kind of got shit on tonight, which could be a good indicator that maybe actually WWE will do something nuts and have him successfully cash in at SummerSlam. But if I'm in this transition period right now and Vince has just left the company, I am not shaking shaking things up and ending Roman Reigns' run after 799 days. Or I'm sorry, 699 days. I believe Sunday will be the 700th. So yeah, I think Theory might have an unsuccessful cash-in, and I think that's the right call because I'm not ready for Theory. I don't dislike him. I think he's going to get a lot of natural hate from the audience because the audience does that whenever WWE gets fixated on somebody that they want to push. So I don't hate Theory or anything. I just don't see him the way WWE sees him. And I don't think a lot of the fans do either. Yeah, and Finn Balor got pinned on his birthday. Fucked up, man. I don't know, Nick, if Dom is ever going to turn, but we'll talk about that here in just 1 second. Anyway, let's get into the actual Monday Night Raw results since we've been spending about 30 minutes talking about Triple H and all of the changes going on internally in WWE. We got a show to talk about tonight. Now, like I said earlier, the show opened up really hot. No intro, no nothing. We just cut right to the ring to a brawl in progress between Logan Paul and The Miz. They're beating the shit out of each other and have to be pulled apart. And I guess they did something before the show went live where Logan called him out or vice versa, and they got in there and started brawling. So that was a really hot way to start the show. Then when they did the pull apart and cleared everybody out of there, you immediately had the Bloodline coming out to cut their promo. So no commercial or anything like that. They really hit the ground running tonight, and that's good. They're in Madison Square Garden. I was expecting to see a pretty decent show. It's a sellout show in their, home arena where the McMahon family has so much history, and it's Triple H's first night on the job. You got the second biggest pay-per-view of the year coming up in 5 days. I really thought they were going to have to come out and hit a home run tonight. So it started out great, but then quickly transitioned into what was largely a pretty typical Monday Night Raw in my mind. But the Bloodline comes out. Paul Heyman touts that Roman Reigns will be champion for 699 days on Saturday, and Sunday will be the 700th one or something like that, and that Brock Lesnar stands no chance of beating him. Then Austin Theory comes out. He comes out with the briefcase, and this was so good because he comes out in the aisleway, but Roman is like, you want to come into my house and you want to come in and talk to the champ, you need to get in the ring and acknowledge me and show some respect. Get your little pussy ass in here, you little bitch. Just talk smack to him. And Theory does. Theory gets in the ring, and Roman completely talks him down and really kind of just verbally destroys him, and basically with his body language and his words told Theory that you are a fool if you think you have any chance, even with that briefcase, even with a fucking gun, if you think you're going to take these titles from me. You're a damn idiot. And then he says the line of the night, and he says, your daddy's not here anymore, so you better realize the situation you're in because you got no protection. So the daddy line got a lot of reaction, not only on Twitter, but from the audience in Madison Square Garden. We immediately had who's your daddy chants right off the bat there. That was great. So Roman throwing that little line out there was very good. I'm glad that WWE isn't ignoring this on TV. They're probably not going to talk in detail about Vince McMahon leaving in promos and shit, but they might mention little things, and that's what I like because that'll get a rise out of us. That'll get a rise out of the fans in the arena. So after he basically gives Theory an earful, they just walk right past him and leave. And Theory, out of frustration, hits one of the Usos. I think it might have been Jay. I think it was Jay. Hits one of the Usos with a briefcase in the back. And he basically like no-sells it. And Roman just kind of holds him back. And like, don't worry about it. He's not even worth it. He's so useless that his shot to your back with the briefcase felt like a mosquito bite. Just swat him away and ignore him. And they left. And then, right after that, we get a Theory promo. I think we go to commercial. We come back. Theory is still out there. He's cutting a promo now because we're going to get an Austin Theory and Drew McIntyre match. So before Theory can even get one sentence out, not even a full sentence, it was a sentence fragment, Drew McIntyre's music hits. He comes out, and now we got Drew and Theory one-on-one. Brawling brutes show up in this thing. They interfere in the match, causing a disqualification until Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre's former WrestleMania opponent and a guy he had a pretty fun run with for the WWE title, comes out and makes the save, helps out McIntyre, and we go to commercial. And as soon as we went to commercial, I'm like, fuck, we're going to come back and it's going to be a tag. And this is one thing after the first night that we haven't seen a change in yet, but I would like to see this change made in the future because this is the definition of laziness. And I hate it when WWE does this because they find themselves with a show that's too long, and they have to fill the 3 hours somehow. And this is a very common tool that they use to the point where it's not believable. They do it so often that the fans can see it coming a mile away. The minute they went to commercial with two baby faces standing in the ring, I'm like, well, we know what's going to happen. Sure enough, we come back to commercial, and look at there. An impromptu tag has been made. I think Sheamus teamed up with Theory, and they took on Lashley and Drew McIntyre, which is a pretty badass-looking fucking tag team. If WWE ever wanted to go back to the days of putting two megastars together and have them go after the tag team titles, holy shit, give me a Lashley and McIntyre team. They would be fucking unbeatable, man. And they kind of were here, too. In the end, Theory taps out to the Hurt Lock after Dolph Ziggler comes out to the ring, or comes to the ringside, and gets Theory's attention a little bit. He's messing around on his phone over by the announce table, and Theory's kind of looking at him. And then, of course, he gets picked up and put in the Hurt Lock, and he taps out screaming. And then, as Theory is leaving after the match, the Usos come out and get revenge on Theory for the little briefcase shot they took earlier. Laid out Theory in the aisleway there, and then Roman picks up the briefcase and gives it to him and says, now make sure you bring this on Sunday, because if you want to cash in on me, you're going to need to bring this briefcase. So they really just annihilated Theory here. And a pre-Vince, before Vince left, part of me would be extremely nervous on Sunday if Vince was still at the helm and still in control and the scandal never happened. Let me tell you right now, if we saw this exact same show, I would be sitting right here right now terrified that they're going to put the belt on Theory, because it's Vince. I'm not convinced it won't happen, but I'm not really so convinced that it will with Triple H. And I think that would be a bad move. I would just keep rolling with Roman. I want to see how close Roman can get to that Hogan record, to that 4-year record. He's only at 2. It's going to be hard to even get there. I don't even think it's possible, but I'd like to see him make it to like 1,000 days. Give me 1,000 days as champion for Roman Reigns, which will be about another year, a little bit less than a year. Probably put him at 1,000 days, somewhere next April or something, around WrestleMania time. It's probably when it'll hit 1,000. So somebody should do the math and see if WrestleMania 39 will be his 1,000th day. No, probably not. It'll probably be like May or something like that. So I just keep running with him, but based on how we saw Theory get handled tonight, I just worry that WWE would do something crazy to get some buzz or get people talking or whatever. But when you have a guy who won the briefcase, then went 0-6, gets beaten like a bitch in every promo and match and segment he's in, to see him walk away from a Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns match with 2 championship belts would be a really, really tough, jagged little pill, no pun intended, Alanis, to swallow. And I don't want to do it. So Theory, not only do I hope you unsuccessfully cash in, I hope you don't even get the chance. I hope somebody beats him. I hope Edge comes back next week and challenges him for the title and beats him the way he beat Kenny Anderson. What was his name? Kennedy. That was great. After the tag match, it's time for the Rey Mysterio 20th anniversary celebration. Now, Rey Mysterio has not been in WWE for 20 years, but he did sign with them 20 years ago. He's been in and out. I know he left once, might have left a couple times. I know he had a suspension or 2, and then he did leave for a couple of years, right? And he did compete, and he was in that match that took the life of Perro Aguayo Jr., right? And did some stuff in Mexico and some work. I don't recall how long Rey was gone from WWE. You guys can probably remind me, but I feel like it was 2 to 3 years. And then he might have had a little stint away from the company prior to then too. Of course, he's also dealt with injuries. I know there's been at least one time where he's been out for close to a year with injuries, various surgeries, things like that. So over the span of the last 20 years, Rey has been in and out of the company, but mostly he's been with the company. And he's got a lot of history there. And they went through it all in the video package set to Metallica, Wherever I May Roam. Showed highlights of his matches with Eddie and Angle and all the great stars he's worked with over the years. And then it's time for Rey to come to the ring for his celebration. Now, prior to the match, Rey and his entire family, we haven't seen the Mysterio family on TV, well, his wife and his daughter on TV, I think since the Thunderdome days. And they pull up in this Mercedes and they all jump out of there. And I was immediately met with nervousness. And I'm like, every time we see the entire Mysterio family together, something gnarly happens. So I was a little bit worried. I guess not worried, but I was thinking that this really could be it. We might actually see Dominic turn on Rey tonight. And I think it would have been a great setting to do it. He's celebrating 20 years. It's in Madison Square Garden. What a spot to shoot an angle and do a big turn and have Dominic join the dark side or whatever. And I think WWE knew the fans think this way because I think they were playing up. I was convinced that Dominic was going to turn on his dad because I could see the truth written all over that kid's body language, just the way he was standing there. And I think he was instructed to be that way. I think WWE probably told Rey, turn your back to Dominic a lot when you're talking. Dominic just look a little fidgety or whatever, and it just really looked like it was going to happen. But as the promo went on, Rey had a very nice speech. He thanked the fans. He thanked a lot of opponents that he worked with. Basically, everybody we saw in the video package, Rey personally thanked verbally in front of the crowd. It was really nice. And after he thanked his wife, his daughter, and thanked Dominic, and Dominic didn't attack him, I'm like, well, maybe we're not going to get the big turn. And then the Judgment Day shows up in the crowd, Finn Balor and Damien Priest. Now, this match was already booked for Raw tonight. We already knew we were going to get this Mysterios taking on the Judgment Day, but I still felt like since this segment was number one in Madison Square Garden, it was the 20th anniversary, and it came right at the top of the second hour, it felt like, usually big angles go down at the top of the hour. So I thought that Dominic was going to turn on him. And then when I looked at Rey Mysterio, he's wearing black and purple like Judgment Day does. And I'm like, maybe Rey's going to turn. That would be some shit. So we didn't get any of that. Balor and Priest come down through the crowd. And then I think we go to commercial. We come back and it's time for the tag team match. Now, it was a really good match and a fun finish. Rey Mysterio pulling out all of the Eddie Guerrero classics, doing the chair thing with Finn Balor and laying down, and the referee notices it and gets pissed. And the Mysterios would win with Rey hitting a beautiful Eddie Guerrero-like frog splash onto Finn Balor for the win. And after the match, Rey and Dominic go back to, I guess, the dressing room or the green room where they have a big Rey Mysterio cake, and his family and his friends were watching his celebration on the monitor. Him and Dominic come in to start celebrating, and that's when Aaliyah busts out this present for Rey. And she gives it to him, and he opens it up, and it turns out that it's his, or what they claim is his original 1997 Halloween Havoc gear, which I've seen Rey wear a version of. I know Santos Escobar in NXT wore a version like that. Even Seth Rollins, I think in the eyeball match or whatever it was, had Halloween Havoc 97 referenced gear. And this was a gift given to him by his daughter that apparently is the original stuff that she was able to dig up or buy online or whatever. And that was very nice. And then as soon as she gives him that, in walks the Judgment Day, including Rhea Ripley, who gets right in Aaliyah's face. And I love that because that's WWE letting the fans know that, hey, let's give them that because they know what's up. They know Rhea Ripley and Buddy Matthews are a couple. And, of course, Buddy is now in AEW. And we know what WWE attempted to do with Aaliyah and Buddy Murphy in the WWE. So just to see Rhea and Aaliyah come together face-to-face was pretty fun. Then the Judgment Day attacks Rey Mysterio. Rhea is even getting involved in the physicality. And they lay waste to him and Dominic. And then shortly after was when we would get the graphic and the announcement that it would be a SummerSlam match between Rey and Dom and the Judgment Day at SummerSlam. And also, it should be noted, during the beatdown, while Finn Balor is, I think, dragging Rey Mysterio through the hallway, he goes, it's not your 20th anniversary, it's my birthday. Happy 41st, I almost said 41th. Happy 41st birthday to Finn Balor. Today was his actual birthday, and he got pinned on his birthday. Fuck. So anyway, we get Judgment Day against Rey and Dom now at SummerSlam. And like I said earlier, I feel like that could be a good spot for Edge to return. I felt like he was going to return tonight. At least that's what we thought was going to happen. Saving it for SummerSlam will probably be more fun, or maybe save it for 1 week from tonight. The Raw after SummerSlam would also be a good place to bring back Edge, because I'm also expecting Bayley to return either at SummerSlam or either the next night or the Monday after on Raw. So you got two big returns. I don't know if you bring them both back on the same show. Both showing up at SummerSlam would add, to what has been maybe not the greatest SummerSlam card they've ever had. Would help add some moments, help add some memories, but you might also not want one stealing the thunder of the other, so it might be best to have one be done on Monday Night Raw instead. So we'll see, but I think Edge could very well play a role in that for sure. After that, we got a Bianca Bel-Air promo. Bianca coming out there looking awesome. They weren't wasting a lot of times tonight in promos, which I really liked. Rey seemed to be the only guy that was really given some time because Bianca barely says anything, and out comes Becky Lynch dressed ridiculously. She's got this all-white outfit on and these big boots that I swear it had to be 3 inches of lifts in them. I don't know. She stumbled once in them. I don't even know how you walk in that stuff. I would assume it would be kind of similar to high heels, just maybe a little bit easier. But she had some big-ass shoes on, and she gets in the ring and just immediately attacks Bianca. And much like Miz and Logan Paul earlier, these women just had a huge brawl, big pull apart, the whole deal. And to me, that's a good way to have their final segment go before we get to SummerSlam, because I didn't need another typical promo where they just go back and forth on the mic for a few minutes. It was a lot less talking and a lot more physicality, and that's probably the best way to book a segment like this between these two and all their history. We've already heard them say everything they need to say, so I'm glad they didn't waste too much time with Bianca doing her greatest and the fastest and all that shit. They just got to it, started kicking each other's ass, and that's the way you should do it. Kind of a surprising match here. Doudrop taking on Alexa Bliss. Doudrop has got Alexa's former friend, Nikki ASH, in her corner, and Alexa kind of wins with a DDT. I think it's a reversal. I want to say like Doudrop's got Alexa up and Alexa counters it into a DDT, and you could tell the way Alexa hopped on her and pinned her so quick that it was probably going to be the finish. But when the ref's hand came down 3, I was like, that was fast and a little bit unexpected. I guess based on the way that the match just was booked. I wasn't surprised that Alexa Bliss beat Doudrop, just maybe how she did it was a little odd. After that, this segment wasn't good. Here's a part of Raw that was not great. We already saw Logan Paul and The Miz in the beginning of the show, and I thought that was really well done for them just to cut to them in the middle of a brawl, and that was a good way just to end it. That's all you needed out of me, but it's Madison Square Garden. They wanted to give Logan Paul a segment, and he's got his Impulsive TV is what he calls it, his own talk show. So he comes out there and starts talking shit to The Miz. He's calling out The Miz to come fight him again. He just wants to do it right now and yada, yada, yada. And then Maurice shows up. We did know Maurice was scheduled to be on the show tonight. We already heard that a couple days ago somehow. I don't know how, but we knew it. So she shows up, she's dressed all in pink, and she's getting in Logan Paul's face, and this back and forth exchange between the two was not very good at all. And I was like, this is just really tough to watch because it's not very good. And Logan Paul, as much as I give him credit for being a celebrity who I think is really doing well, and I even put on Twitter tonight that I hate not hating that he's in WWE, because this is a guy under normal circumstances that good mic work should not care for at all. But he impressed me at WrestleMania, so I'll give him a go. But I'll give him a chance, I should say. But one thing I don't think he should be doing is being a babyface, because he's a natural heel. I was in San Diego a year ago, the night after SummerSlam, or 2 nights after SummerSlam last year for Raw. And Logan Paul was on that show, and it was the loudest reaction I had heard all night for anyone. And that was all of the fans in San Diego booing their balls off at Logan Paul. So now he's going to try to be a babyface in this, and it's not working, because there's nothing about him that really screams babyface to me right now. Yeah, he had a good showing at SummerSlam, but it would be so much better of an idea to maintain him as a heel and then have fans develop respect for him that ultimately turns him into a babyface. Because if you try to make him a babyface, the fans are just going to reject this. The Miz got over a little bit as a babyface much in the same way, because he was a real-world guy, did not come in with a ton of credibility, wasn't really well-liked at first, and fans didn't really look at him as a professional wrestler. But as the years went on and we saw improvements in The Miz, and all of the championships he was winning. Granted, the match against Cena and the world title in 2011 was probably, in 2010 was probably premature, but after that he proved himself, was working hard and having decent matches, and he was great on the mic, and the fans started to take notice, to where when he did have his little brief runs as a babyface, the fans did like him, and then when he was a heel, fans appreciated him, you know, for his heel work and how good he really truly can be. So he got a lot of that respect from the fans just by working hard. And I think that's what Logan Paul, that's what WWE should attempt to do with Logan Paul, is much of the same thing. You know, obviously fans are going to hate him or make fun of him or reject him a little bit because of who he is and his celebrity status and some of the things that made him a celebrity. He's an easy guy to hate. You know, he just comes off and just looks like a natural douchebag. So let us hate him, let him be a heel, but let him impress us, because that's the way wrestling fans are. They're always looking for people to impress them, and wrestling fans these days appreciate the work of heels so much that they cheer them on TV. Tonight's crowd felt very, very pro-Roman when he was on the mic and stuff, and this guy is supposed to be a heel. So I think with Logan Paul, in time, he could be accepted. I fully believe that he could be accepted as a babyface in the WWE universe. I just don't think so right now. And WWE should do something fun at SummerSlam. Do a double turn at SummerSlam. I don't know if you could pull that off, to turn Miz. It'd be easy to turn Logan heel, but it might not be that easy to turn the Miz babyface. But maybe if you do something maybe after SummerSlam that maybe brings Logan and Miz back together, to where Logan can, you know, really be despised and loathed by the audience if he's back in good graces with the Miz. Maybe the two of them have their fight, they hash it all out, they shake hands after the match, have a tearful hug. Not a babyface hug, a heel hug. And Maurice gets in there and she's so happy. And, you know, maybe this is going to be an actual tag team going after the championships. I'd be fine with that, to put Logan back where he was prior to WrestleMania. So we'll see, but I think they should at least leave that option open for SummerSlam to maybe do something that's not just going to be a simple, basic babyface win for Logan over the Miz. That's my opinion anyway. In a match that I missed most of Dolph Ziggler and AJ Styles. There's a pretty good-looking tag team. Taking on Alpha Academy. I know Gable got pinned. I don't even know if it was Dolph or AJ got the pin on him, but they beat Alpha Academy, and I was out of the room for most of that match. And then that left us with the big main event, six-man main event that was booked earlier on in the day between the Bloodline, Roman Reigns and the Usos, taking on the Street Profits and Riddle. They gave this match 30 minutes, although there was probably 9 minutes of entrances, and I think we had 2 commercial breaks, maybe even 3 throughout the course of this match. So at the end of it, we probably only got a handful of minutes of really good actual wrestling. It was a very, very good six-man tag, or six-man main event. A lot of action like we would typically see. Good to see Roman Reigns back in the ring, you know, after his very, very quiet July. We have not seen him, you know, on WWE TV a ton, and certainly haven't seen him wrestle in that many matches since SummerSlam, only a handful. So really good to see him on Raw tonight as well. And he got the win. He speared Riddle for the finish, pinned Riddle, and celebrated with the Bloodline. And as the Bloodline is leaving, somebody who we hadn't seen all night. Up until this point, we hadn't seen Ezekiel, Kevin Owens, or Seth Rollins at all. And then finally, at the very end, Seth Rollins' music hits. He comes down. Of course, he's facing Riddle at SummerSlam on Saturday. Has a little stare down with Roman, because they had that issue back at the Royal Rumble and stuff, which I thought was cool. A little stare down with Roman. He laughs at Roman's face a little bit, and Roman basically just lets him go, do whatever he wants to do to Riddle. And then he got in the ring and attacked Riddle and laid him out. So that's a little suspicious as well for SummerSlam, because I was kind of thinking that Rollins would probably beat Riddle at SummerSlam, because Rollins just did a whole series of jobs to Cody, and now Cody is out. He also did not win Money in the Bank. Riddle, though, however, has been losing too. He lost to Roman in the title match on SmackDown a few weeks ago. He got pinned here in the six-man, and then Seth came out and attacked him and beat his ass after the match. So now I'm kind of changing my tune a bit, and I feel like Riddle might actually pick up the win against Seth Rollins, and I'm fine with that because I do like Riddle. I think that I don't know if Triple H has completely different ideas than Vince, but based on everything I've seen up until Vince's retirement, it felt like they are slowly and surely positioning Riddle to belt him up at some point in the next couple of years. So I don't know if that will change now that Triple H is in charge or not, but I went from feeling like there was no way Seth could lose at SummerSlam to thinking now he might. So we'll see what happens. But that is your Raw in a nutshell. Let me look at the SummerSlam card. Here's what we got for SummerSlam so far. We've got Logan Paul versus The Miz, Riddle versus Seth freaking Rollins, Bianca Belair defending the Raw Women's title against Becky Lynch, Liv Morgan defending the SmackDown Women's title against Ronda Rousey. We got Pat McAfee taking on Happy Corbin. We got the Usos against the Street Profits for the tag team titles with the special guest referee Jeff Jarrett, who did appear tonight on Raw, got between the Profits and the Usos and told them that they better get their act together at SummerSlam because he's not going to take any shit or whatever. We also have Bobby Lashley defending his U.S. title against Theory. And we have the newly announced match tonight, Judgment Day, taking on Rey and Dominic Mysterio. And, of course, in the main event, undisputed WWE title on the line as Roman Reigns defends against Brock Lesnar in a last man standing match. So I believe that puts the total count as of right now to 9 matches at SummerSlam. That's probably all it's going to be. They could stick in one more, like I said, round it out to an even 10 if they want to do something silly on Friday with Sheamus and McIntyre and rebook that again. Or they could throw Kofi and Xavier in a match or something. Something could be added at SummerSlam, or I'm sorry, on SmackDown last minute. But, SummerSlam is the very next day. So whatever they add, it's probably not going to be anything major, but we have no Intercontinental title match on the show, which is kind of a bummer. But that's probably going to be the way the card is going to look. You factor in a couple of rumored returns like Edge, like Bayley, and you have good in-ring matches here and maybe a couple of surprises. I think SummerSlam can pull itself off and be a good show. Last Man Standing does add another dynamic to Roman and Brock. Granted, we've seen Roman and Brock a lot. I think we need to cool it with the Roman and Brock. I was fine with the WrestleMania match, but I said I don't want any after that, and here they are doing it again. And tonight, and kind of on the advertisements and stuff, they are kind of making it sound like it's the last time these two face. But wouldn't that be giving away the ending? I know Corey Graves had said that a couple of times tonight, that this is going to be the last encounter, the final encounter, the last man standing between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. But suppose Brock Lesnar were to win. You think Roman Reigns, the character Roman Reigns, the tribal chief Roman Reigns, would just come out on TV and be content with that? Well, they said me and Brock are done, so I'll just let him have the titles until he loses them, and then I'll challenge that person. If you hold the title for 700 days, you should. I know that automatic championship rematches aren't automatic, but they should be in this case. If Roman were to drop the belts to Brock, he absolutely should, in storyline, get a rematch. Because that's would be the right thing to do storyline-wise. Doesn't matter if it gives us the 9th Brock and Roman match. Doesn't matter. You just dropped the title after holding it for 700 days. You're going to get a rematch. Tag team champions who hold the belts for 3 weeks get rematches after they drop them. So I think Roman getting a rematch after 700 days would happen. So the fact that they're trying to advertise this as a final time kind of makes you think that Roman is going to retain. I think Roman is going to retain anyway. I did not expect Brock just to show back up and win the titles again. I just feel like they put this match together because it's all they had to put in the main event. It's the only big marquee match they really had in their pocket to go to, so they just redid it again. But for them to imply that these two aren't going to face again also implies who the winner is going to be. You know what I mean? So some of this stuff is pretty predictable. We're going to do predictions on Friday, but looking at the card, I'm just going to do like rapid fire early predictions. This could all change on Friday. Now, Logan Paul and The Miz, I'm going to go Miz. I'm going to go Miz to beat Logan Paul. And that's a good maybe idea to do. Humble the kid a little bit. Hey, you just signed with us. You gotta learn how to come to the arena and to say you're going to lose tonight and go out and do it. So I think Miz actually might score a victory over Logan Paul. I think Seth might beat Riddle. I think Bianca is going to retain over Becky Lynch. I think McAfee's going to beat Corbin. I think the Usos are going to retain the tag team titles. I think Lashley's going to retain the U.S. I think I think Liv is going to retain, but with some help. I think it's going to take Charlotte or Bayley showing up to cause Liv Morgan to retain. That's what I think. And I think Roman Reigns will beat Brock Lesnar. But we will talk about these matches in depth on Friday when I come up here to do a predictions video on SummerSlam. So stay tuned for that on Friday. And we will be up here on Wednesday as well for the Dynamite Watch Along, which will see the return of Bryan Danielson in the ring. That's very exciting. We'll probably elaborate a little bit more on whatever's going on with Jonathan Gresham and that whole situation in AEW and, of course, Ring of Honor now that Claudio is the Ring of Honor champion. So we'll be getting into a lot this week on SummerSlam week and a whole new era being ushered in WWE. It's a really interesting time. We're all going to be, it's going to seem pretty surreal in the future. You know, those of you who are in your 20s right now, maybe a teenager, relatively young, you're going to look back at this time 20 years from now and be like, wow, I remember when Vince McMahon retired. Vince will be long dead by that. Well, maybe not. He'll be 97. But in 20 years, you'll look back and say, yeah, I remember the day that Vince, was forced out of WWE and the changes, and who knows where WWE will be at that point. Who knows who will be owning them. 20 years from now, is it realistic to think that Stephanie and Triple H are still going to be in their respective roles 20 years from this day? I don't think that's very realistic. I think we could see a lot of changes even with them in the future. I don't think anybody's going to quite have that longevity like Vince did, and it depends on who buys WWE, when it eventually sells, and how the company's going to be treated. I would hope that WWE would take care of that prior to a sale. We're only going to sell it to someone who's going to keep it going and continue it being a global brand and all of that, but it makes me a little bit nervous for the future if it does sell to a larger company or gets swallowed up by, in some sort of merger, that it could lessen the power of a Triple H or a Stephanie. I hope that inevitably when somebody else or something else owns WWE, that they will let the wrestling people handle the wrestling stuff. And I know in WCW, when AOL and Time Warner merged, they started sending a lot of people into WCW with no wrestling experience, making big decisions that they have no business making. And I really hope that in the future, down the line, many years from now, that's not going to be a problem in WWE. And that again is where AEW could regain a little bit of momentum, because I think right now all of the momentum that AEW has had, getting a lot of these stars signed, being a very attractive alternative to WWE, that momentum could slow a bit now that you don't have that crazy madman in charge. But if a few years go by and WWE sells and the internal structure of the company changes and they start putting people in power who don't have any wrestling experience, and we can kind of see that, behind the scenes unraveling a little bit of things where there's going to be a lot of changes and a revolving door of people in charge, and it's just going to be a cluster. That's when I think AEW could maybe regain some of that momentum, since they are currently the company that's owned by one guy and has one guy in charge. That is really important. You can't discredit that, because part of the reason why WWE was so successful, we've heard this from countless amounts of superstars in shoot interviews and podcasts over the years. They all say the same thing. WWE's biggest advantage is having one go-to guy. The very same advantage that AEW currently has right now. And WWE, for the first time in their existence, is finding themselves in a situation where you don't have one guy in charge. You have one guy in charge of creative. You have another woman as the CEO, who is the co-CEO with another person. So you essentially kind of have 2 to 3-ish people at the top of the WWE food chain. And granted, 2 of those people are married, but still, it can make the waters a little bit murkier. So I think WWE probably wants to establish right away, if Triple H is going to be the final say from a creative standpoint, everything has to go through him. Approach somebody else first, approach an agent, approach Bruce or Koski or whoever, and then they take this information to Triple H and he can make the decisions. I think it's going to have to be something like that, to where there is a clear chain of command, because when you don't have a clear chain of command, this goes for any business. This doesn't have to be wrestling. You walk into a restaurant, you walk into some store or market, and nobody's in fucking charge. You're going to see just everything being not run well, So hopefully that's something that WWE can really keep a handle on, because like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm happy and optimistic and really excited for potentially positive changes happening in WWE to make Raw and SmackDown easier to watch, to not have to watch a show not have to watch a segment, because we've seen these all the time. We see these segments multiple times per week. Sometimes you watch a segment and 1,000,000,000% that was all Vince. He thinks that's funny. That's the shit he likes. That's the shit he thinks the audience likes. And it's always so obvious when Vince is behind a specific segment, because it's usually so stupid that it can only be Vince. So little things like that, I think, are just going to get a lot better in the long run. We're not going to have to watch this 77-year-old fucking juvenile, have poo-poo jokes all over TV. Granted, Triple H, he's had his fair share of poo-poo jokes and sophomore humor himself. I tell you what, I hope the WWE board doesn't investigate who vandalized the Nation of Domination's locker room in 1997. They might not like what they uncover. Triple H could be in a whole lot of trouble as well. What if the Wall Street Journal reports the Macho Man rumors are true? Ooh, no, him and Stephanie. Oh, man, but it's kind of surreal to sit here and talk about post-Vince WWE. This is something that I always knew would happen in my lifetime, but maybe wasn't expecting it to happen so fast and so quick. And what wound up taking Vince McMahon down is truly the funniest. And by the way, WWE did release a statement today saying that they do have to file, a W-8 or some sort of crazy form to disclose all of the money that Vince McMahon paid out to hush money. I guess they investigated and found that all of these payments made should have been reported in WWE's financial earnings. So now they have to go and resubmit all of the years that Vince paid the hush money. That now has to be factored into WWE's financial records, which we're not talking about an obscene amount of money here, $14 million spread over, a period of 16 years for a company that brings in $100 million in revenue every year isn't going to be that noticeable, but it's still something that you absolutely have to disclose. And that kind of also disproves the theory that, well, it's Vince's money, because I was laughing at how many people were saying that online. Well, it's Vince's money. He should be able to do what he wants. I'm like, well, you don't understand anything about business. You can't just do that as a CEO, especially when you have code of conduct clearly written out for you and specifically prohibits certain behavior and certain things. And Vince did these things. So what the fuck did you think was going to happen? But a lot of people's defense was, well, it's consensual. Doesn't matter. It's his own money. Doesn't matter. But now we're finding out it wasn't his own money, and they do have to disclose the financials for all those previous years. So they got themselves into some trouble here, and really, when you look at it, like I said, before Vince even made the announcement, I'm like, how's he going to survive this? He's not going to be able to survive this. He's going to have to step down. There's no way around it. I planted my flag right from the start. I'm like, I know Vince has survived the federal government, and he's a different type of cat, but this is something that's going to be tough for him to overcome. And I just felt like right from the very first day that this report happened, that eventually he was going to have to step away. And it happened even earlier than I thought. So crazy times in wrestling, crazy times in WWE. Trey Williams loves Vince McMahon. This sucks. Well, that's just too bad for you, Trey. It's not awful for WWE. And that's the thing. You can still love Vince McMahon and admire Vince McMahon, but if you truly believe that Vince McMahon being in charge of WWE creatively in 2022 is good for the company, then I want some of whatever you're smoking, because that's crazy. You can appreciate Vince's genius. You can appreciate the success he had as a wrestling promoter over the last 40 years and everything that he built and everything he helped create. It's totally okay to admire Vince for that, but it has been long past time for him to step away. He's been out of touch for a long time. He's made obscenely stupid decisions over the past, I'd say, 10 or 15 years as it relates to his product, and his presentation. And we have been desperate for a different mindset in the company. We've been desperate for a different philosophy in the company. You can still appreciate what Vince built while also acknowledging that it's time to move in another direction. I don't understand how anybody can look themselves in the mirror and have sympathy for Vince McMahon. to feel bad for him. Seriously? This is a multi-billionaire sitting on literally a pile of money who has been entitled enough throughout his life to where he's been able to fuck anything that moves. And now that he's finally, suffering the consequences of these actions, he has nobody to blame but himself. This is nobody's fault. It's not the Wall Street Journal's fault. It's not the women who blew him or the women he paid off or any other gross, disgusting thing that he did. This is nobody's fault but Vince. If he truly loves his company and he truly loves it with all of his heart, then these are some of the thoughts that should have gone through his head before he decided to be dirty. I'm in charge of WWE. I'm the CEO. I should know that if I get pinched for this, it's going to cause me some serious problems and I could potentially lose my company. Did that never occur to him during all these relationships and stuff? So I don't understand how anybody can be sympathetic towards Vince McMahon. Like I said the other day, if he wanted to be the head of his company right now, he could be. All he had to do was keep that jackhammer zipped up. That's it. He'd be running creative right now. He'd be laughing his ass off backstage at Gorilla at the abysmal Logan Paul and Miz segment, thinking it's the funniest shit he's ever seen. Time for Vince to go. It's been more than time for Vince to go. Vince absolutely screwed Vince. Without Vince McMahon, there is no WWE. Okay, so what was going to happen when Vince McMahon passed away? WWE just dies? To me, that's an insult to Vince McMahon. You don't even realize that you're insulting the man that you admire. You should understand that Vince McMahon has spent 40 years building this company, building this empire into a global brand, setting it up for the day that he does leave, the machine can still run. They've had all of that in mind. They are, their claws are dug in deep. They got corporate offices all over the world. They are able to run without, believe it or not, Vince McMahon being there because he has built that company. And to do that, that's exactly what he's built the company to do, is to run without him. Because he is 77. He's going to be 80 in 3 years. He's already older than his father was when he passed away, I think. Can't remember how old Vince Sr. was, but I think he was a bit younger than Vince is right now. He's not going to be around forever. So if Vince McMahon, let's say, passed away in 12 years when he's 89, does that mean WWE dies? No, it doesn't. I think a multi-billion-dollar global company can somehow figure out a way to run without a 77-year-old maniac at the helm. To believe that Vince has such control over WWE that it'll fold and crumble without him has got to be the most naive thing I've ever heard. That's insane. Yeah, Trey, I can't remember exactly how old Vince Sr. was, but I think it was less. Somebody can probably look it up right now and tell us, but I'm pretty sure Vince is older than Vince Sr. Because Vince Sr. passed away, I think, like 2 years after he sold the company to Vince. So he was gone really quick. 83. Andrew says 83, and now we have somebody says, I'm not talking about Vince Jr., I'm talking about Vince Sr. Well, let's just look it up ourselves, because I don't trust you guys. You guys are crazy. Vince McMahon Sr. Here we go. I'll find out right now. He died at age 70. 1914 to 1984. That's 70 years, correct? Wow, he died way younger than I thought. Way younger than I thought. I thought he might have died at like 75 or something, but no, he died at... No, I'm sorry. He died at age 69. Excuse me. He died in May, so he hadn't even turned 70 yet. He died 2 months before, about a month and a half before his 70th birthday. Vince McMahon has outlived his father by 8 years. So, don't you think? Why is it so inconceivable to think that, yeah, maybe WWE should start thinking about succession? But Vince was so stubborn, he wanted to do it until he died. But if he would have been granted the ability to do that and been allowed to run that company until he died at age 100, I think we would have seen some really terrible wrestling from WWE. So this is good day overall for WWE. And I can say that while still being a little bit shook and stunned that we're living in a wrestling world without Vince McMahon. It's going to take some time to get used to that. I'll fully admit it. But overall, these are changes. And these are good changes. If this was Vince having to bow out due to a medical problem, or the doctors have said, look, your heart is on the verge of stopping, you need to chill. If he got dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that that unwillingly forced him out of the ring or out of WWE before he was ready due to health or something like that, I would have felt very bad for Vince McMahon, because I'm like, he really wanted to die in that chair in Gorilla, and now he's been dealt some horrible hand where, he's got asshole cancer or something, and, now he has to step away or whatever it could be. I would feel a lot more sympathy for Vince if it was something like that, because that would be sad. You'd feel bad for him. But this, it amazes me, the dick riding of a billionaire who wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire, that goes on in wrestling social media to gargle this man's balls to that degree. It's insane to me. Vince deserves a lot of credit, but, Vince has made some stupid moves too. And his attitude and his entitlement is what did him in. That's the reason he's not the head of his company. There's nobody to blame except for Vince McMahon Jr. He can look his old wrinkly ass in the mirror and blame that guy, because that's whose fault it is. And that's why I don't have any sympathy for him, because why would you? Jake, if the company sold, will Stephanie and Triple H be gone? See, that's the shit I don't know. I would assume, but I don't know, that if they do sell the company, there's going to be conditions in place that we have to keep a McMahon at the helm or something like that, because you don't want non-wrestling people coming in to take over your company. And I think that Vince McMahon, still as the majority shareholder, is going to have some input on that. And I'm sure that all of the talk internally behind the scenes with Nick Khan and everything going on at the top of WWE in terms of them potentially selling the company and what their plans are when they do sell it, I don't think it's just going to be automatically taking the highest bidder, sold to you. I think they want to make sure that things are going to remain. I don't know if that's something that you can have written into contracts or something like that, or, if Stephanie and Triple H are going to have to sign agreements, maybe like multi-year agreements to keep these roles or what. But I would think that if a sale does happen, whoever buys the company isn't going to be just completely allowed to go in there and fire everybody, all the staff, production crew, and wrestlers, and bring in new people. I would hope that it's not going to be structured that way. And some of the people that have been there, the producers and the ring crews and the agents and Triple H and even Stephanie and people like that, do maintain major roles in the company, because that would still keep, the McMahon family aspect attached to WWE somewhat, and would continue that legacy. So I don't know. I don't know how it's all going to shake out once a sale happens, but it's kind of hard to think that it ain't going to happen. Yeah, seeing a lot of reports of rain for SummerSlam. That could get a little dicey. Yeah, exactly, Barry. Even if a company gets sold, someone still needs to run it. And all I want is for WWE not to go through what WCW did, because when WCW was sold, they were sold to people that didn't want anything to do with a wrestling company at all, and they started sending people there that had no wrestling experience and shit like that. So whoever buys WWE, you want to make sure that they're in it for the long run. That's why I think Disney is a good option, because you don't want some big conglomerate buying it and then all of a sudden they just decide they don't want wrestling anymore. So I think it's got to, and then they sell it to somebody else, and then the ownership changes, and that's what did in Ring of Honor and TNA and, and companies like that, is just, and WCW for that matter, is that you didn't have one stable ownership. And we've always had that in WWE. And now that Vince is gone, I think that's step one. Step two is going to be passing this company along to a new owner. And I think that's coming kind of soon. So anyway, what a week, what a day. My God. Well, anyway, thank you guys for being here tonight. I said yesterday that I probably wouldn't come up here and do a Raw review today, but since we got the news about Triple H earlier on, and there was that great photo of him standing in the entranceway with the headset producing his first, or heading up the first TV episode since he's been named head of creative. It was a great shot, monumental day in WWE history, and figured we should come up here and talk about it. So thanks again for being here tonight. I wish you guys a good evening. I want to make sure I didn't miss a super chat. I did not. Next scheduled stream will be Wednesday night. We'll be watching Dynamite together, and then after that we'll be up here predicting SummerSlam on Friday. We will review SummerSlam on Saturday after the show, and then that will be it for the weekend. No watch along this week as I will be at work. So keep a lookout for us Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday this week. I'm really looking forward to it, and until then, you guys have a really good rest of your night, and thanks for being